Welcome, welcome everyone. My name is Jenny Westerkamp. I am the founder of All Access Dietetics. And today I will be talking about how to pass the RD exam with less stress. So at the time of this recording, it's the summer. We're calling it the Study Smarter Summer because we want you to study smarter and really approach this exam in a different way and in a really strategic way. So you're going to learn about that, learn about strategies that are going to help you dive into all of this. I would love to know, just from the people that are live here, when are you taking the exam? I'd love to know like your timeline and kind of what stage you're at, and this will help me sort of gear the content or spend a little bit more time depending on what everyone's timing is. So drop in when you're planning to take the exam. So you're taking it end of July, September, July, end of July, mid-August, August, September, July. Okay, great. And someone did just quickly ask, will it help for the RD tech exam? No, I mean, it's definitely for the RD exam. They're kind of designed similarly, but it won't be exactly about that. You might get like half of the content will be helpful to you, just to be honest, in case. And everyone's going to get this recording too, if you do want to, if you do have to leave early or whatever, we're recording it, we'll send it out to you. But yeah, just to answer that question, just someone in the chat there. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to pass the exam with less stress, but as a very quick introduction, again, my name is Jenny, CEO of All Access Dietetics. I founded the company when I was 21 years old back in 2008 or 9, when I was an RD to be myself, and I really felt like there needed to be more resources for future dietitians. Then I continued to run the business as I do now, but also was a former professional sports dietitian. I worked for 3 professional teams here in Chicago. I was the assistant at the Chicago Blackhawks for 4 years, 2 years as the minor league dietitian for the Chicago Cubs, and then really got my dream job in 2017, where I was the head team nutritionist for the Chicago Bulls. Did that for 5 years and then decided to retire and open up a group practice called All Access Dietitians. It's a virtual group practice. We are insurance-based, which is really cool. A lot of dietitians don't know how great taking insurance is, because it's a kind of this unknown fact that if you take insurance, there's a lot of people that can get nutrition services covered 100% with a lot of insurance companies, even if they don't have a diagnosis or disease. I think we sometimes think, oh, we can only help or bill for people that have diabetes or obesity or heart disease, but there's actually preventive coverage now that covers diet counseling. And because of that, we have this private practice. We can see clients in 13 states virtually, and we can bill their insurance, and almost everyone that works with us is paying $0 out of pocket, which is really cool. And then we're able to bill our time at greater than $100 an hour. So it's pretty awesome. Just that's a little plug for what's going on in the industry. What I'm doing outside of All Access Dietetics is running this group practice. Definitely check out our website if you want to learn more of how we're doing it, and see what the potential is for you to have a group practice someday. And then I'm the host of Dear Future Dietitian, which is our podcast with All Access Dietetics. We have about 53 episodes on there now. We just celebrated our first birthday, so check out those episodes too. And finally, in regards to All Access Dietetics, the company, again, founded it in 2009. We do admissions coaching called Dietetics Admissions for people that want to get into the field or want to get into their graduate program or dietetic internship. And then we have Pass Class. And then that's our RD exam prep, which I'll talk about. And then our courses and toolkits and free resources. We also have our RD to Be Summit that's coming up. We do this every year. This will be our 3rd annual summit, and thousands of RD2Bs sign up for this 2-day virtual event. It's super fun. We have awesome speakers ready for you. So definitely stay in contact with us on Instagram, on email. And Pass Class is our RD exam prep that is really an all-in-one solution that teaches you an evidence-based method, plus includes a tutor-led community. 2 things that so many other RD exam preps don't do. They don't teach you actually how to study, and they don't give you access to that tutor unless it's like a very expensive hourly rate to work one-on-one with a tutor. So when you get Pass Class, you get Pass the Exam Prep, which is what you'll see on our Instagram. This is our big binder that teaches you the method, plus has the study guide and all the practice questions and study guide questions to implement the method. Then you get review session recordings and access to our Pass Class community, which All of these things were designed based on the feedback of over 2,000 RD2Bs that had used our tools, and also based on my conversations with 500 people one-on-one back in 2019 that did not pass the RD exam. And I figured out what are all the reasons why people do not pass. And then I made sure that elements of that were included in the design of Pass Class. So it's really a RD exam prep that was created based on the feedback of future dietitians, and people love it. And we've had now over 3,000 people use our RD exam tools. There will be a sale, and I'll just tell it to you now in case you have to go early, but you can get $100 off Pass Class with code webinar if you decide that you want to join us in there. All right, so the agenda for today is I want to talk about RD exam basics, especially for those of you, that are studying right now and ready to be taking the exam. We'll talk about some exam day things that you need to be aware of. We'll get into some statistics and then get into the 3 strategies and have time for Q&A. If there is any questions that, come top of mind to you, I have the chat here open. It's very easy for me to monitor that. So if you do want to drop in your questions, I will try to answer them as we go. All right, so one more poll question, or a couple more poll questions for you, but we already did this one, so let me skip that when you're taking the exam. The second poll question, why do you want to pass the exam on your first or your next try? I know some people here might be repeat examinees, but your next try or your first try, why do you want to pass? I want to hear your why. And I want you to think about your why, because there does need to be that strong why when you're having to tackle something as hard as studying for the exam. So what is your why? Like, why is this important to you to pass? All right, you want to start your career. I know some people say, I just don't want to think about it. I want to study once and be done with it. Okay, someone else said, I have a job lined up and you want to start as soon as possible. You just want to get to that next step. You kind of want to close that chapter. You are a very determined person. So when you put your mind to something, you want to get it done, and you also have that job lined up. So it's kind of like you're wanting to commit to the goal of passing, and you want to do what it takes to pass. And then someone here says they only have their bachelor's, so trying to beat the new changes in 2024. This actually comes up almost every time I do this webinar. And I do just want to make sure if you're eligible to take the exam by 2024, so by December 31st, 2023, if you're eligible and you could register to take the exam, you do not have to pass by 2024. You just have to be eligible by 2024. And that's really helpful, because then there isn't that pressure. Like, you just need to make sure you complete your supervised practice, you get your verification statement from your program, and that you can go and register for the exam, but you don't have to pass it by 2024. Okay, so just want to make sure, that might take some pressure off if you are confused by that. All right, and then going a little bit deeper, because we know like the initial thing is like, oh, I just got to start my job. But how would your life change if you passed your exam on your first or next try? Try to think about how your next 3 years are going to be. What would be different? Would you be able to move to a different country, or not country, sorry, different state? Would you be able to, maybe advance in your specialty that you want to advance in, or some different changes with your family that would happen if you started working? Think about what that is. If you don't want to share, all good, but we have one here. You'd be able to start in an RD role and be able to start saving for a home. Awesome. That's a perfect answer of like, there's a bigger impact here by passing this RD exam. And so you want to like visualize that, know that there's this positive future, and that's going to be really motivating for you, because you're going to need that when it's, you're not feeling like excited to study for this exam. All right. Someone else said saving for a house and a new car. And then everything. Okay. I would be able to help save for a new home with my fiance. See, now we're getting into like the emotions of it, right? And why this is important to you. And you've already worked so hard. And so how are we going to make that final push, go all in and study the right way for the exam, so that you can have these things and your life can continue on in the way that you hope it will. Oh, one more here. I won't be as stressed anymore. I would be able to focus on starting the life I envisioned for myself. Amazing. Very well said, Sydney. That's exactly like the mindset I just wanted you guys to reflect on and be able to pull from that when you are studying. I know some people will also just even have that visualization of writing their name, comma, RD or RDN after that, just so they can really feel what it would feel like to actually get to that point and become an RD. Let's dive into the RD exam basics here for those of you that maybe don't know this. So this and the next few slides are taken from the CDR's handbook. The handbook is found on the RD exam page of CDR's website. And so I just highlighted a few things that I thought were the most important, but it would be good for you to go through and read over that so that you understand the exam. So there's a minimum of 125 questions, a maximum of 145 questions. And that's just based on the exam design because of how it's computer adaptive. Computer adaptive, I will explain more about that in a few minutes here, but basically the computer is adapting after you take the first 100 scored questions. It's going to then adapt those potentially either 0 to 20 additional questions after that, going to adapt based on your performance of those 100 questions. And it's really confusing. We don't actually know exactly how it works, except that it's going to make sure that you're proving your competency and a high enough level of competency in all 4 areas of the domain. Okay. I will get more into that in our first strategy. There's 25 questions that are piloted or pre-test questions, which you will not know what they are. So you have those first 125 questions, 25 will not be graded. Only 100 of those will. What's good to know here is when you see a funky question, you're like, I don't know I've never seen that word before. I don't know what that is. In your mind, just tell yourself it's probably a pre-test pilot question. It doesn't count for a grade and you move on. You don't want to get your confidence shook because of a question that seems off. You just want to like stay confident and say it's probably a pilot question. And that's really good. Like some people go into this exam not even knowing that there's pilot questions. And so you know this now and you can keep your confidence knowing it's probably a pretest and just move on. There's a 2.5-hour time limit. And what's confusing about this is some people will see that the exam appointment time is 3 hours long. And so they'll think I have 3 hours to take this exam. You do not. You have 2.5 hours to take the exam because 20 minutes is going to be a tutorial at the beginning. And then 10 minutes is going to be a survey at the end. You must complete 125 questions though for a score. You cannot go back and change answers as you do your questions. And you have to get to 125 for a score. You have to answer the 125th question to have a score. You obviously want to pace yourself so you have, enough time. And it's like 1 minute a question is a good rate. Not that that's what you have to spend on every question, but that should be your average rate. So you can check the time every 20 minutes, let's say, and be 20 questions along in your pace. So you have that time, you have to get that. If you do not answer, let's say you get to 123 and the time ends, you will not get a score. It won't even tell you what it would have been. It's just like a null score, which is really unfortunate because then you don't even know if you were like how well you did in that first attempt. The 4 domains are broken down into principles of dietetics at 21%. Nutrition care for individuals and groups is double that, and that's the largest section of the exam. And then we have management at 21% and food service systems at 13%. So when you break down the first 100 questions that are graded, remember there's 125, those first 125, everyone will get, 25 won't be graded, 100 will. Of those 100, you will definitely get 21 principles of dietetics questions, 45 nutrition care for individuals and groups, 21 management, and 13 food service. You will definitely get that amount. That was confirmed. I went to a FNCE last year and they confirmed that that's how it works at this RD exam session. So that is verified information. Here's what the exam room could look like, or like a similar design in this cubicle. That's just these 3 walls, very plain. And then there's a proctor, someone that's observing, whether they're in the room like this or on the other side of a wall, they can still see into the room. And they're monitoring everyone's progress and everything. And And that's like the setup. Sometimes it's good for people to visualize it, so there's less of an unknown. We have also had people who, if it makes sense to them, they will actually go to the exam location and get a sense of what it looks like, what the room looks like, just so that they can feel more comfortable. Not everyone needs that, and I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but if you do feel like that would help you, that is a good idea to visualize it. Kind of like going through a dress rehearsal, practicing your drive there. Like it'll feel more familiar and you won't have that extra nerve on exam day. Speaking of exam day, so here's some notes from the CDR handbook that I pulled. So all belongings will go in a locker. You cannot study in the test center, so don't bring your notes or anything. You just have to bring yourself, the least amount of belongings, that you can, because why not just kind of keep it simple. You want to have an erasable note. You will have an erasable note board that they'll give you, but you can only write on it once you're actually in the exam room. There's a pop-up calculator that's provided on the computer screen, but then you can also request a simple handheld test center calculator. Don't bring your own calculator. You won't be able to use it. You can't have any of your belongings going into the exam room. Examinees will then also have the option to hide the timer that's counting down. I think it's counting up. Shoot. It's counting down. You'll know once you see it when you first start. Sorry, I actually don't know if it's counting up or down, but you'll have a timer, so you'll know the timing from there, and you will have the option to hide that if that does make you nervous. And then finally, the exam score will display on the computer screen after the exam, and the proctor will provide a printed score report. So you might have seen, if you're on social media and you see like people taking a selfie with their score report, that's what you're getting at the end, that will have your score on there. And after you complete the questions and it shuts off, you do answer those survey questions first, and then you see the score on your computer screen. Oh, and thanks to someone who chatted in. So it counts up, the timer counts up. So I think what that means is, yeah, it's going to start at 0, and then it's going to count up, 30 minutes have gone by, 40, 50, 60. And that actually is great, because then it's easier to kind of pace yourself at that 1 question a minute pace average, and check that as like 20 minutes go by, 40, on the 40, on the 60, that kind of thing. All right, let's get into some statistics really quick. Statistics more so like not to scare you, not to discourage you, but more so to say, let's go all in on this. Let's make sure you're part of the pass stat. So what do we think that the first time pass rate is for the RD exam? So, 1,000 people take it. What percentage are going to pass on that first try? All right, so I guess is 70%, 65, 40, 77. So like around the 60s, 70s. Okay, we saw 55. All right, let me show you what it is. This is the most recent from CDR. So, and let me break it down, because it looks like deceiving, as any stats do in like a research study. You always have to like dig into it a little bit more. So you can see here, they broke it down by the different program types that people are in, and the 3 different types: coordinated program, dietetic internship, and graduate program. And then the total. So I look at the total first, and to say that there's about 2,800 total test attempts, and for first timers. And that was, I believe it's just in like the last 6 month period, not the whole year. That's about how many people take it for the first time. And then of that, about 1,900 passed. So that's a 68% first time pass rate. If you break it down, it's a little deceiving, because you can see here that the most people came from dietetic internships or DI-MS combined programs. And so there's just more people, which when it gets to that, it's like, more likely people might not pass for whatever reason. So then that's why that rate is the lowest at 66.7. And then we have the least amount of people here at 187 attempts for graduate programs, those new programs, that new model, future education model. And so then we see almost a 73% pass rate there. And then coordinated programs have about a 71% pass rate. Okay. So again, we want to be in the 71, in the 66, in the 72, in the 67% bucket, right? And we want to make sure that we're not making common mistakes, and that we understand the strategies it takes to pass this exam. Here's the typical approach that I see people take. And when I was talking to those 500 people that did not pass the exam, this is the story they told me over and over again. So, hey, what materials did you use? Oh, I just did what my friends were doing. Okay. What did you do with that study guide? I just tried to memorize everything. I would read it, I would rewrite it, I would make flashcards and just try to memorize the content. Okay, how did that go for you? Well, I was really overwhelmed. So then I wanted to get this other tool that had these practice questions or these videos or whatever. And I got overwhelmed by that. And then I just felt like I was all over the place. I would buy something else. And it was just, nothing even connected. It was all just like different products, different study guides. And I just overall was overwhelmed because I didn't have a plan. And by the end, they said they went into the exam not knowing if it was going to work. Like they had no idea if they studied enough. They didn't know if they retained all the information well, if they were really ready for the exam, which added to their nerves. Here's the better approach. Once I've spoken to so many hundreds of students about this is what I think is the plan. The plan is, first, you have to understand the RD exam, how it's designed. And I'm going to get into that. That's going to be the first strategy. And then I want you to reflect on your past and think about how you study differently, how you learn differently, and how you can personalize that to your plan. Then create a plan, create an actual plan and method. We obviously have one in past class that's already created for you with the method, the syllabus, the study plan, everything, the roadmap, all created. But if you don't get past class, then, you're creating a plan for that. And then you follow the plan with accountability. You're holding yourself accountable. You're getting a study buddy. You're, having some check there that you're actually following your plan. And then you feel this increasing confidence because you're following the well thought out plan, maybe adjusting as you go. And then you're taking the exam knowing that what you did, like how you studied and what you did in those study sessions, was best for the exam itself. And that is the better approach, because you should feel more confident as you study. You should feel like you're retaining the information effectively. You shouldn't feel overwhelmed or burnt out when you have the plan and the roadmap. And so that's what I wish for everyone, to take this better approach. Let's get into the 3 strategies then to pass the RD exam with less stress. Number 1 is to understand that this isn't like a college exam. So we have to adapt our studying based on the fact that this is a different exam. We know that most college exams are sometimes multiple choice. So you think, oh, that's similar. But the exam is designed differently in that it is a credentialing exam. And so what does this mean? This means that it is trying to test if you are ready, if you have the level of critical thinking skills needed to go out there and be an RD, to be a registered dietitian on your own in the real world with no preceptor looking over everything or telling you kind of what to do. So you have to be able to prove that competency that you are going to be an entry-level dietitian and that you have enough critical thinking skills and knowledge to go out there on your own in the real world. So that means the questions are going to be getting at that critical thinking skills. It is a computer adapted test. So what does this mean for you? The way that it is scored, we don't have the exact, here's how much everything's weighted or how the score is actually created. But what is important for you to know is, number 1, with those pilot questions, to not freak out about those. Even if you don't know which ones they actually are, you still just want to keep your confidence and know that there's only 100 graded questions, but that you do need to get enough right in all domains in order to pass. You can't just, even though food service management is going to be only 13 questions, you still have to get enough of those 13 questions right in order to pass the exam. And that's why the scores are weighted. So if people have already taken the exam, they know that you get a domain 1 and 2 score, and then you get a domain 3 and 4 score, and then you get a total score. And the total score is the one that matters, that you actually have to have a 25 in order to pass. But the scores are weighted in such that they need to make sure you still have a high enough level of competency in all 4 domains. So again, it kind of goes back to the other point. You have to be strong enough in all areas, not just a certain percentage of all of the areas. You have to be good in all of them. I say that because some people will be like, I'm really bad at food service calculations. I'm just not going to worry about that. I'll get those wrong. I know I'll get enough right and everything else. That's not how it works. You have to feel strong in all of the areas. Then the other thing that came up, so this is in my conversations with the people that didn't pass, they would be like, I always felt like I could narrow it down to 2 answers and then I couldn't figure out the best answer. And that's exactly how the exam is designed, to get you to 2 answers that could be right. And you have to prove to them that you have that higher level of critical thinking, that you know why that one answer is correct over the other. That's always trying to trick you. It's always trying to make you prove to it that you're ready to be in the real world. And that's why I'm going to tell you how you practice or study practice questions so that you get really good at this, at being able to choose the really right answer, not get fooled by the one that might seem like it's right. You will likely see topics that you have never seen before. What does this mean for you? Again, could be a pilot question that they're just testing. Or if you do see topics that you maybe have not seen before, there's still ways to break down the question in order to give your best guess. When I was at the FNCE RD exam session last year, they actually have proven this, that, going with your strategy of just doing your gut first impression answer has proven to be right the most often. And so if you know like keywords from the answers and from the question itself, even if you don't totally know like what the topic is, that your first guess could be would be most likely to be right, versus like trying to dig through and try to figure out the answer more deeply, or like overthink it. So that's a strategy that you'd want to know going into it. Like, obviously you want to like dissect and give yourself your best chance. But if you're really thrown off and you just don't even know, then trying to go with that first gut instinct answer is going to be your best option. Finally, wrapping up this strategy of understanding that this isn't like a college exam, is that we know from CDR that 2/3 of the questions are application and 1/3 is knowledge. That means that we need to understand that you need to study not for knowledge as much as you do for application. That means memorizing is more for knowledge. That's going to be part of your study plan, because you're going to have to remember temperature danger zone and essential amino acids and how many grams of carbs are in certain food groups. That's knowledge. That's going to be 1/3. But then you're going to have to apply that knowledge and take that up to the next level using your critical thinking skills. And so you want to be practicing that skill in your studying. It's not just about knowledge. And that's where I think people get it wrong with trying to memorize study guides, for example. And we will get into, because that's a huge part of the Study Smarter method that we teach in past class. So I will get to that in a minute. Getting into strategy 2, reflect on your past experiences. This is where you go on Facebook groups, you go in Instagram, you talk to your friends, and they tell you, this is what I used and I passed. And then you see another post that says, this is what I used and I didn't pass. It's like everyone is really different in their needs and their learning styles. So you want to reflect on your own past experiences and ask yourself some questions to be able to say, okay, this is a tool that would be best for me, or this is the approach that I should be taking most often. Here's a question. Where did you have weaknesses in your training or your experience compared to the CDR outline? So compared to the RD exam outline that says all the different topics, you go through that and you say, where did you feel like you didn't have that real world experience, which is usually where a lot of the critical thinking gets developed. And how can you make sure that that's a larger part of your study plan? And then the next question would be, if you could go back in time to a challenging class, what would you have done differently to get a better grade? Would you have found a study buddy? Would you have gone to a tutor or the TA more often? Would you have recorded the lectures and listened back to them? Would you have done more practice questions? What would you have done to get that better grade? What do you think would have worked for you? And then when you made study plans in the past, what obstacles got in your way? So you have had to study for something in your life before this. When have you been able to really stick to that? And what did you need to happen? Did you need to leave your apartment or your home? Did you need to stay in your apartment or your home in order to do that? Did you need to go with friends? Did you need to hear things, read things, write things down? Whatever it was, think about where you did it well, but also where the obstacles were, like where you didn't put in enough time, and think through how you can set yourself up for success with your actual plan. And then how have you done on standardized tests? This is something to think about in terms of test anxiety, just around how you believe you are in those situations, because I do think there's so many different people here, right? And I can't speak for everyone. I can just tell you some different experience, or like different types of people that I've had communication with about this. So some people are actually, they don't have any test anxiety, but they tell themselves a story or a narrative that isn't true. I'm just bad. I'm a bad test taker. And like, that's it. And it's not true. Then I have people that say I'm a bad test taker, but then it can be true if they do have test anxiety that would require support or help there. And it could require accommodations. So I always bring this up because I want you to explore that. Is it a belief thing that you have? Is it an actual, condition that you would want to get medical help with? And is it something where you would want to then get test accommodations for this exam, which could mean a separate room, it could mean more time, and explore that, because I can tell you that there are students that have come to us that we tell them, explore the accommodations and see, and it's very simple to get them. But it can be the difference between a pass and a fail, depending on your unique situation. I can't speak for everyone, but we have seen it happen where they were like, they didn't think they really had a problem, but then they did. And then it was just a matter of them getting the accommodation that allowed them to pass. They knew the information, they had the critical thinking skills and the application skills to pass the exam. It was just having to kind of overcome the stimulus and like the situation of actually taking the exam, and having those accommodations help them with that. So I like to bring that up. Knowing that everyone's really different, I can't speak to any individual situation, but that is worth exploring. And then finally, have you ever experienced a computer adapted test before? And that's why knowing what that even is really helpful, and being more informed just about the structure and the design of the exam. You kind of have to know your beast before you can attack it or whatever. So that is also important. And that would be, thinking, okay, how can I study for the actual exam the way it's designed? And that leads into the third. We just have one question here, which I will take. Are they accommodating to physical disabilities? Yes. So you can have that conversation with the actual test center. It's called Pearson VUE, and their link is on the CDR RD exam website. And that's where you can, in the handbook, it will have information on how to get that accommodation. And of course, all of those buildings will be ADA. Oh my gosh, I want to say certified. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the correct word there, but that it will be accessible for that too. So, but Pearson VUE is the testing center that would be the ones to convey that information to you. All right, number 3 is create a plan that prioritizes critical thinking over memorization. And this is what I've been alluding to this whole time. So we're going to finish here with how you actually do that. And I always say to people, knowledge gets you close to passing. Critical thinking is what makes you pass. The critical thinking muscle is what determines if you choose right from those 2 answers that you've narrowed it down to, and really proves to the computer system, to the exam, that you have that level of competency needed to go out in the real world. It's testing your ability to make decisions, right? Sometimes you are faced with a couple decisions you could do for especially like nutrition care for individuals or groups, but to be able to make the right one in that real world setting as a dietitian, and not so much just like your textbook knowledge, but the actual incorporating of the situation. That is what you need to practice in your studying. Your method should address this. How are we going to do it? Here we go. The grand finale, people. Let me tell you an example of how you do this with practice questions. And this is inspired and a part of the Study Smarter method. So I'm giving you a sneak peek into that. There's a lot more with the Study Smarter method because practice question sessions are just one of 4 types of study sessions that we want you to have in your study plan. But I will tell you the one with practice questions. Now, here is the way that I've seen students, similar to how they just try to memorize a study guide, they also just try to take hundreds and hundreds of practice questions and quiz themselves on them, right? So you might say, okay, I'm going to take these 25 practice questions, I'm going to do them like a little mock mini exam, and then I'm going to grade myself. And then I'm going to look up why I got the ones I got wrong, and look up like what the right answer is. And then I'm going to move on. That's a really, really, really inefficient way to study a practice question. Why is that? Because number one, you could have guessed right on some of those questions and then never looked back at the answer to know, did you really understand why that answer was that answer? Do you really understand the rationale behind those answers? Or did you just guess right? And then you're never going to know that that was a weakness of yours. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, even if let's say you've got a question wrong and you go and you say, oh, it was C, not D. Okay, it was just that. Okay, fine. And you're like staying very surface level on it. You're basically just now prepared for that exact question on the exam instead of actually understanding the full topic and the full bigger picture topic area that it was like quiz or testing you on, right? So you're leaving a lot of information, like valuable feedback about what you know and don't know on the table when you just try to quiz yourself. So what we do with the Study Smarter method in practice questions is we actually say, okay, in these 2 hours, we want you to just cover 5 practice questions. Like, we want you to slow this down. And we want you to take a practice question, circle all the keywords, go look up what those keywords are in your binder and pass the exam prep. And we want you to write down everything you know about those keywords. We want you to understand what is the bigger picture topic that's being asked. If it's a management theory, it's not just about that one component of that management theory, but it's like, let's look at what the whole theory is, right? Or the whole concept behind this question. And then from there, make sure you understand that. And then you can then go through each answer to say, why is this one right or wrong? And with the right rationale, and then be able to really dissect it and prove to yourself that you know the answer based on all of your research, and that you know why that's the answer and why the other ones are wrong. That will help to show you if you do have weaknesses in that topic. And if you do, then you can add additional sessions to focus on that, and you can keep track of that very easily. But then it also gets you prepared, not just if they ask you that one question, that was that practice question, it'll prepare you if they ask you a question on that entire topic. And that's the magic of it all, because you are now more efficient. You have now prepared for 10 possible questions on the exam instead of just one. That's why I think people need to try to do like thousands of practice questions, because they're only learning the component of it and not diving deeper into the full topic. So then you don't have to do as many practice questions. You're going to retain the information so much better. You're going to fully understand that topic. And we know that what all the topics are in the RD exam. So we're having those questions be related to those topics. And that's how you can efficiently study and feel more confident as you go. And that's studying smarter according to how the exam is designed. That is the muscle of breaking down practice questions that you need to be working all of your study sessions, so that when it's time to actually use those muscles in the exam, you're going to be really trained and you'll be ready to do that, to lift the heavy weights, right? So that is the big strategy that you learn in Pass the Exam Prep, powered by the Study Smarter method. That's the method you're learning. Now, bonus strategies that I have for you. I do think it's helpful to track your hours, not to say that there's a specific magic number of hours, because everyone comes in with different levels of experience and schooling and all that, but only to be aware, to be able to say, hey, I said I was going to study these 20 hours this week. I'm just making up that number. And by tracking, I see I only did 10. Well, now I should think, do I need to adjust my exam date? How can I make up these extra hours? How am I going to make sure I stick to my plan? So it's really for awareness that you want to track your hours. Then you want to reflect and adjust your exam date if needed. I know a lot of people are very optimistic about how much they can actually study, but then when they go to do it and life gets in the way, they still try to rush it and still try to like not change their exam date when in fact they really probably should. Then request test accommodations if applicable. That information is in the CDR handbook. So would definitely recommend, if you've had trouble in the past, if you have any sort of condition that can impair your ability to take the exam, or things that could impair your daily life, that is something to explore. Plan for 145 questions and check time at every 20 questions. That either that or go with my 1 minute per question rate too. So you can just check at every 20 questions or 20 minutes and see that you're where you're at with the questions. Either way you want to do it, but that's that pacing is good to have top of mind. And finally, answer all 125 questions at minimum. That can be the single reason that people fail the exam. And we've seen it happen. And so I'm saying it multiple times. You have to answer all 125 questions minimum. Okay, so we'll get into some wrap up here on past class, but if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box now if anything has come up, and I'd be able to answer them. But in the meantime, I did want to say, so we do have that sale going on with past class. You will get the full package. What we really wanted to make sure is that people didn't feel like they needed to buy anything else. So many people try to mix and match tools and they'll throw out these names. I use this, this, and this. Just past class is all in. It's all one. It has the study guide with the practice questions, with the study guide questions, the reference tool, teaches you the method. Then there's review session recordings, which are going to be on all the biggest areas of the exam. And you're going to get that lecture style learning from Susie, our tutor. She teaches you mnemonics. She goes through practice questions. And then finally, the past class community, which is so amazing. There's hundreds of people in there at any given time. There's live study halls every week with Zach. There's mini banks or mini lessons, and there's a bank of mini lessons in there. You can post your questions on things that are confusing. He answers them. He even answers them with video explanations sometimes if that is like the most helpful. So, and then you can find like study buddies and motivation in there as well. So it's really the perfect program based on the feedback of thousands of RD2Bs that have gone before you and passed this exam with past class. So again, there is a sale going on right now for anyone listening to this, especially if you're listening to the recording at any point later in the future, you can use code webinar for $100 off. And payment plans are available. So it's around like $65 to get started if you do a 3-month payment plan and you use the $100 off code. So definitely can make that work. If you need an extended payment plan for some reason, just reach out to us and we can see what we can do to help you there. All right. So with that, if you have any questions that you don't want to chat in, you can email info@allaccessdietetics. But then I'll take a few questions here and that's it. But if anyone is leaving right now, thank you so much for attending. And I hope that this helped you just get your head around like what the RD exam is, the strategies that you need to take, how you can use practice questions differently, more effectively, and how past class can help you put that all together and help you pass this exam with less stress. All right, so then just to get into some questions, what does a score of 25 or more mean? I assume that's not out of 100. Yes, it's a weighted score. They don't release, there's no like correlation between percentage of questions that you get right. And that is because questions are weighted by like their level of difficulty, and it's random on like how many hard questions you get versus like easier questions you get. And because of all that and the way the algorithm or whatever, like the calculation works, it's a weighted score. So the way I think about it is like, it's kind of like basketball when there's free throws, jump shots, and 3-pointers. Those are like the types of questions and you just have to get to 25, but there's a lot of different ways you can get there. You can make a bunch of 3-pointers, you can make a bunch of free throws, and that's all mumbled jumbled, random with the exam that you get. So that's why it's like a weighted number of not a percentage, because it's not a percentage. If you pass 125, does that mean you are doing well? There's no, if you're getting more than 125 questions, it just means that the randomness of your first 100 graded questions it means that you haven't just gotten enough of those points scored yet, right, to get to that 25. So you're going to need to answer more questions. And that you could have done great on it. You just could have maybe randomly gotten some of those free throw questions, those easier questions. So then you just need to answer a few more to get those points. So I wouldn't look at it as a bad thing if you do get, past 125. So keep your cool, just keep answering your questions until you get to that 145. Sometimes, so it might shut off at 125 if you didn't pass, because it means you didn't get enough points in that first 100 to even make it possible to pass to 145. So that, it can go either way, but you don't want to even think about it. You just want to answer the questions one by one and not lose your nerve or feel overconfident if you're getting more questions, How can we find an exam center? The exam center, that will be on Pearson VUE. So when you go and get your registration, or you're able to register for the exam, then you'll be able to find your test center. You can also go to Pearson VUE, their website, in order to see all the locations that they have. But those locations, they might not all be available when you go to actually schedule. So you would really just know when you're actually scheduling. Okay, on that note, I think that was it. So thank you everyone for attending live, and to those of you listening in on the recording. Love talking about this topic. I think it's just that one final mountain that we all need to climb as dietitians. You got to get past this, and we're here to help you do that. So please reach out if we can help you with anything. We also have tutoring, and we will have a mock exam coming out this summer as well. So we hope to help you in some way. And then we do have a free exam toolkit. You'll find that on the past class page. You can get samples from past class on the past class page on our website. So, and I'll drop that in here if anyone is still on and wants the direct link to past class. And don't forget to use code webinar if you do want $100 off, and you can do payment plans as well. We make it as accessible as we can to make sure as many people use past class and pass the exam. So thanks everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your questions, and enjoy the rest of your day.